The Keshe Foundation, an independent, non-profit, non-religious, space-based organization founded by nuclear engineer Mehran Tavakoli Keshe, is introducing to humanity the science of the universe, plasma science. Keshe Foundation develops universal knowledge and space technologies that provide solutions to major global problems, revolutionizing agriculture, health, energy, transportation, materials, and more. The application of plasma science in the form of specially developed plasma reactors and other devices will give humanity the real freedom to travel in deep space. Plasma science exists throughout the whole universe. It is here and it belongs to you. Our knowledge, research, and development regarding the plasma structure has progressed to the point of enabling everyone to participate in the process. Become a creator and understand the work of the universe for the good of humankind on this planet as well as in space. The use of megravs, nanomaterials, GANs, liquid plasma, field plasma, and other plasma technologies have come as a new dawn for humanity to progress and work in harmony with the universe. Conventional technology applications are wasteful, damaging, and cause pollution to the planet and all living beings. Plasma science provides solutions and improves existing methods and use of resources in all aspects that touch the lives of all beings. Plasma is defined by the Foundation as an entire content of fields which accumulate and create matter and is not defined by its physical characteristics like ionization or temperature. Also, with plasma science, we understand how we can convert matter back to the fields. Quoting from Mr. Keshe, MEGRAV stands for magnetic gravitational, which means plasma absorbs or gives. And every plasma has the both. It has give and it has take. And when they can't find the balance, they distance themselves until they find the balance they can give to the others, that they can receive what they want to receive and give further. Certain atoms and molecules release and absorb magnetic or gravitational fields. Released fields are available to be absorbed by other objects. The Keshe Foundation has developed a way to gather these free-flowing fields from the environment within a resourceful and beneficial new state of transitional matter, which M.T. Keshe named GANs. The first step of the process of the formation of various basic types of GANs is nano-coating metals. This is carried out either chemically by etching, steam coating with sodium hydroxide, or thermally by heating, fire coating by gas burner. During either coating process, gaps between outermost layers of atoms are created. The residual coating is often referred to as nano-coating, defined by the structured layers of nanomaterial, which build up during the creation process of the coating. Nano-coated metal in interaction with other various metal plates in a saltwater solution creates megrav fields. These fields then attract available elements to form a specific GANs, which collects and settles at the bottom of the container. This GANs is formed from independent energized molecules like little suns that can be used in various applications.
So what we're going to introduce today is an entirely new science. It's something that we've got to add on to our existing science that we've been taught, and we will probably break quite a few paradigms on what we've been taught in the past. As technology has been brought to you by Mehran Keshe, he discovered this technology and over the last 30, 40 years has developed this technology. He's patented a lot of his technology and open sourced it. So it's there available for all of us, and we're all learning how to use and understand this technology. It touches everything in our lives, from space, health, materials, energy, you name it. We'll look at things from a totally different perspective when we really begin to understand this technology. Our background, Lisa and I began watching this technology about 2 years ago when they brought out blueprints to manufacture MagRav devices, magnetical gravitational devices, to save money on your electricity bill. So I thought this was a bargain, anything to save a few dollars. So we started watching and started building our device. And we were taught all the different methods of nanocoating and so on, and we soon realized that there was so much more to this technology than just creating a device that saves your money on electricity. And there's the unit that we had built. Wasn't the greatest work of art, but it works. We plug it into our power supply and we save 16% on our power bill. Some of the people that make really, really nice ones save 30-40% on your power bill. But we realized that this was just the carrot at the end of the stick, because it's much more than just trying to save a few dollars on your power bill. When we were making the different capacitors and parts for this and working with the ganses and making the different ganses, we could feel that energy in our hands, even though we were using gloves. The one day I'd worked so much on it, and that evening I couldn't sleep because my body was so energized I could almost feel every single cell in my body. And it's just incredible, and you realize that there is really, really something to this. We switched it on and say we saved 16% energy, but that's a minor issue now, because the real change we noticed in our house was our behavior and our environment, because our two kids, they were about, at the time, I think 20 and 16, and they've always been fighting their whole life. They just never get on, and they're always bickering and fighting. We had switched this magrev on, and it was about 2 or 3 months later, we'd noticed that they stopped fighting. They talk, they're the best of friends now. So what it had done is it changed the whole environment of the house. It had given you what you needed in the form of energy. And so after this, we began our journey into studying, and we've just spent the last 2 years trying to study. We unplugged our TV from the aerial and just started studying this technology. So the presentation today, I'm going to cover on all our experiments that we've done using this plasma in agriculture. And I'll give you a little brief understanding of the science behind it, and then Lisa will take over and really talk about the health aspects of this plasma technology, because we all need the health side. Okay, so my very first experiment was February last year, and just briefly, we run an aquaponics farm, and essentially you'll see that green tank there has a fish, silver perch, and then we've got the 4 grow beds where we put our lettuces, and the water is constantly circulating 24 hours a day. So the water from the fish tank goes through our grow beds and then back to the fish tank. And the fish are there to provide the nitrogen through ammonia, and which break down either to certain bacteria, and then the plants take up that nitrates, and then the plants clean the water for the fish. So it's a very natural cycle. So we had started. There's just a picture showing you our lettuces grow. We've got polystyrene rafts that float on the water, so the roots are in the water and the plants can grow above the water. So that's the principle of our aquaponics. Now, in this country, we always know the heat of summer. So our biggest problem every summer was the extreme heat that we get, and we get weeks and weeks of high temperatures. Our water in our system gets to 28, 30, 32 degrees. That last summer, we had 32 degrees Celsius. So my whole mass of water sits at 32 degrees Celsius. The plants don't like it. The roots go brown, they start rotting, falling off, and the plants just stop growing because nothing can grow under that temperature. So I experienced this every summer. So what we had decided to do was take some of the GANS material that we had made, and I put it into a ginger bottle, and we'd put 3 mixtures of the GANS in there. And so I decided, because we're still new and not too sure what this GANS is all about, so I didn't want to pour it into my water, so I put it in the bottle, and I placed the whole bottle in my aquaponic system. So the bottle there, as you can see, is just floating in the water with the GANS material inside. And there you can see our lettuce planted 19th of February, 25 days later, we were ready to harvest our lettuce. And this was amazing for us because this is during the height of our summer. There you can see when we lifted up that raft, and there's that bottle of the Gans in that water, and you can look how beautiful our root structure was. It's totally white, clean. The plants grew as if there was no heat outside. It was incredible. Here's some pictures showing you, because we got 5 of those systems and they're all separate, so we had just put the plasma into one of them and kept the other 4 as is. So here's some photographs of the lettuce taken from a system next door compared to the lettuce grown within that plasma water. And you can see it's chalk and cheese. You know, the lettuce is on the one side is just wilting, can't handle the temperature. And the one with the plasma water, it was as if there was just nothing affecting it. Totally strong and healthy. Here's a photograph comparing the different systems, and you can see the plasma there on the white roots, beautiful white roots, compared to all the others, and they're all sort of dark, rotting, and you can just tug on those roots and they would fall off. So there was a definite huge change that we had noticed. Even in the weight of our lettuces, because they were able to grow normally, the plasma one gave us 150 grams, whereas that same sort of lettuce out of the other system that was battling was 55 grams. So it was amazing that we had seen. But the important point to take out of this is that we had only placed one little bottle of ginger beer with about 30 mils of the Gans material into our water system. And we have, one of our systems has 24,000 liters of water, which constantly circulates. So this little amount of Gans changed our water and changed the environment through the plastic bottle, because we haven't added anything to the water. And it's this transfer of energy or fields that we're going to start talking about, because we had this field transfer from the Gans material through the plastic bottle into our water, and the water acts as a carrier for those fields. So that was our very first experiment, and we were obviously delighted and over the moon with that, and we were hurriedly made more Gans to throw in all our other systems, and we've been growing with those ever since. Our second experiment, we decided to look at sort of the shelf life of growing food with this plasma. And we'll grow little micro radish greens for restaurants as garnish and that. So we decided to use those. Now what we'd done was we had soaked our radish seeds in the water of this Gans material, and we just soaked them. We used CO2 and CH3 for about 24 hours. We then planted them. I had another batch of seeds which I just used plain water, and we soaked them, planted them, and watered them. The ones I watered with plasma water and the other ones used with plain water, because my whole idea was to try and compare how the plain water ones would grow with the plasma water ones. Now, when we're talking of the water from the Gans material, you can see in those jars the Gans material is sitting at the bottom. So all we do is we just take a syringe and we just extract the water off the top. So we're not even actually using any of the plasma itself, because that plasma in there has energized that water. So we just take the water off the top, and that's what we soak the seeds in. There's just a photograph at that stage. We had not seen any major difference between water and plasma water. There was the day of harvest, also not much of a difference in the size. There we'd come across some root structure. We had seen a big difference in the root structure again, where the plasma radish had a much vigorous root system compared to the other one. So at this stage we thought, maybe our experiment is a bit of a failure, because we have not seen much of a difference between the two. So we cut them and washed them, and then we put them into punnets, and we put them in the fridge. Now normally we've been growing this micro radish for about 3 years beforehand, and they'll always only last about 14, 15 days before they start rotting, going black. And if you've seen any rotten food just forms a little puddle at the bottom of the container if you leave it long enough. So we've always had 14, 15 days. So we just said, all right, we're going to put these two in the fridge and see what happens. So there's a photograph of day 1 and compared to day 9, and they still looked the same. Now here we've got to day 14, and they're still looking very, very good. Normally by this stage they would have been rotting, starting to rot. Now we get to day 20 as well, and they are still looking beautifully and fine. But I couldn't figure out now, because the water one was lasting just as long as the plasma one. And I wanted to do this experiment so that I could compare the water one to the plasma one to show that, hey, this plasma stuff really works based on my previous experiment. But they were both exactly the same. Day 28, and they're still looking good, both of them. Day 47, they had started, you could see some of them are tinge yellow, and even at day 47, if you would have put them in a sandwich, you would have eaten them and they would have been fine. We opened them up, there was no smell at all coming off them. And then I forgot about them in the fridge. So day 78. Now here we could see some of more yellowing, but there was no smell. They weren't rotting. And what was most annoying is the water one was lasting just as long as my plasma one. And I wanted to prove the difference. Day 134. Now they've turned yellow, but there's still no rotting. When you look at the photograph from the side, they haven't shrunk. Normally things rot and they just all go flat to the bottom. Here they are still firm, just yellow, but still firm. No smell coming off them. And then I really forgot them in the fridge. 180 days, 6 months. Here now they're starting to look a bit off. And you can see how they had then started shrinking down to the bottom. And then I decided to throw them out because I thought, well, 6 months is long enough to prove a point. But why did the water one last just as long as my plasma one? Because that was my whole objective. And we couldn't figure this out at the beginning. So the question is, why did they last so long? And why did my water one last just as long as well? And the simple answer is, first of all, when you grow something with the plasma, you are changing the total environment of that plant. So you are giving it energies which make it very healthy. And so it's not impacted by the outside environment. But what was happening was the plants that had been soaked with the plasma water had been feeding the energy to the radish which had not been soaked into the plasma water. So we had created this infinity loop between the two. Because since I had started planting the seeds, they were together when they were growing, and I put them together in the fridge. So they were always there next to each other, even through the different containers. So the stronger one was feeding the weaker one. And that's the principle of this plasma, is when you have a strong, healthy plant system, it will always automatically feed a weaker one. And there was a connection because they're both radish. And so we began to understand that this material, this GANS material, is giving off fields. It's giving and receiving fields all the time. And these fields can be imprinted into the water, like we'd shown with our ginger beer bottle with the GANs. So then the water becomes the carrier of those fields. And these fields create a whole new environment around the plant so that they can withstand harsh conditions. And that's what happened, and that's why that radish lasted so long. And then we got the transfer of the fields from the stronger to the weaker. And that's why the water radish lasted just as long as the one with the plasma. So if this GANS water can make my radish last 6 months, can you imagine what it can do to your body? And that's where Lisa will get into on the health effects this afternoon, just now. So these were the two experiments that we had done with the GANS material, just to show you what this stuff can do. And we're only just beginning to touch the surface of the potential of this. So I'm going to go into a bit of the science behind it now so that it doesn't look like magic, and we're not doing magic tricks here. So the last century was all about our matter state. Then we developed the nuclear and atomic knowledge, and now we have gone a step further into the fields. And we'll be talking about fields all the time. And these make up the electrons, protons, and everything we see around us. These all fields. But let's just begin to understand magnetical and gravitational fields, or maggrav fields. And we've all played with magnets. So we've all grown up with square magnets. And we know that when magnets attract to each other, we call that now gravitational, because the two will want to pull together. When we do opposite magnets or the same polarity, they always want to repel each other. And so that's what we call magnetical, because they are giving off. So it's just the same thing we've always understood, but it's just different terminology. So we have magnetical and gravitational. But that's in square magnets where we dictate the polarity, north and south. Okay. If you watch this video, these are round magnets, but it gives you an indication when you move one, the other one moves, and they maintain a distance between each other. Okay, so what force is making these round magnets move? Why do they always seem to keep a distance from each other? You move one and the others will interact and maintain that same distance. And why do all the other magnets move if we only move the one? So what's that connection between all of them? And what would happen if these magnets were round spherical balls? Because these obviously are still flat-based and in a matter state. And we've been taught in this matter state that it's magnetical fields with the magnet. But we have to look at it from the next level down. So the distance and gap between the magnets, so we look at the magnetical, which is the repulsion, and gravitational, which is the attraction. So the strength of each magnet would dictate that gap. If I had a very strong one or a very small one, that gap would be closer or further apart. So the strength of each magnet dictates the gap. And as one moves, the other one must move to maintain that gap. It's essentially the fields that are interacting with these magnets. The fields exiting the one magnet from the top will enter the other magnet from the bottom. And so you have this infinity loop. So that's the connection between these magnets. And we're viewing this in the matter state. But that's the connection. These are the fields which we don't see. And the direction of the flow of these fields dictates what we call magnetical and gravitational. So it's the fields coming off is magnetical and the fields going in are gravitational. And that's where we get to the picture of what we call a picture of this plasma. And so each one of those little GANS balls that we had used in our radish and the aquaponics farm essentially looks like this. It's like a little sun. And it's constantly radiating, giving off fields, and constantly taking in fields. But we just don't see those fields. And we've done some ice experiments as well, where you take the GANS material and you put it over a bowl of water and you put it in a freezer. And this is the effects that comes out from your freezer, because those fields are imprinted into your frozen ice. So it's a great way to see the fields. So this comes down to the whole question when we look at an atom, and the scientists have told us that an atom is an empty space. There's the proton, the neutron in the middle, and then your electron on the outer side, and they don't really know what's in between. What makes them move? What makes them rotate? And here you can give an idea. If your center golf ball is the neutron, a kilometer away is your electron. It's all empty space. We're all made up of empty space. And what is in those empty spaces is magnetical and gravitational fields. That's what fills up our space around us. So everything around us is filled with magnetical gravitational fields. We just don't see them. So when we look at our solar system, we're also told there's dark, empty matter, empty space out there. No. What we see are the planets and the sun, but what's in between is all these magnetic gravitational fields. And that's why we can then get down to equating the plasma that we are working with as a round magnet, because now the plasmas that we can create, and you guys can create in your kitchen, create these plasmas, has both magnetical and gravitational fields. They're constantly interacting with you and the environment and everything else. And this is how everything is connected. Because you cannot have gravitational without magnetical. They always come together. So we come down to a single plasma. So a single one of our little GANS materials there, a single ball, is a little plasma which has magnetical and gravitational fields. And each one of those is made up of millions and millions and millions of fields which come together to make up, whether it's an atom or anything, because even the Earth is a large plasma. We've always seen those magnetical pictures of Earth's magnetic fields. Earth is now just one huge plasma, which is giving off magnetical fields and taking in gravitational fields. There's this flow of fields. And now when you look at the sun and the earth, the sun is also a plasma. And now we can begin to understand how the earth and the sun interact with each other, how they keep their distance, and how they rotate. They're just like magnets. And our body is a plasma which is made up of tiny billions and billions of little plasmas. Each one of our cells is one of those plasmas, giving off fields, taking in fields, and together make up the human body, which gives off and creates our aura. But it's all magnetical and gravitational fields. All plants are a plasma. Every single plant, tree, is the same thing. They're giving off fields. They're all made up of fields, and they're giving off the fields. And even the atom is a plasma. This is an actual photograph, and you can see they don't see anything in there of matter state. It's just made up of fields. So everything is a plasma. It's a dynamic interaction of fields. We only see these fields when they slow down enough to become the matter state. So that's why we see ourselves, the chairs, the trees, is because those fields which have slowed down enough to create the physicality that we see. Otherwise, everything is just made up of dynamic fields interactions. We're just a ball of energy, of fields that's going at one hell of a speed. And then we look at the spiral, and the center, if it's a wound-up spring, the center is the strongest point, and as you wind out to the outer side, you will see right that orange there is the matter state. So this is the field strength. So that's why when the fields slow down enough, it creates the matter state. When you go up again on the matter state, then you get visible light, X-rays, gamma rays. It's stuff we don't see, but we know it's there. And so we're just touching on the beginnings of this plasma, because the further inwards you go into the spiral, the more powerful it becomes. And that's where we're going into. So the existence and interaction of dynamic and different strengths, speeds, densities of magnetic fields leads to what we know as the planets, galaxies, plants, animals, molecules, and atoms. Everything is made up of these fields. It's only the scale that differs. So from the galaxy to an atom, it's made up of fields. It's only the size that differs. And they all move and interact in exactly the same way as our magnets. So now we can begin to understand and tap into the knowledge and the energy of the universe, which is these magnetic fields. So we're beginning to understand what's really happening out there. And a new revolution of peace has begun, because this technology is peaceful. And I thought I have to bring in, because of the type of conference it is, to explain space travel and how simple it is to explain space travel. So this is how the planets position themselves in relation to the sun. If we know that the sun is a very strong plasma, and so it's a very strong magnet, and our Earth is a smaller plasma, a smaller magnet, the interaction between them creates that distance and gap. That's why we see a certain distance and gap between all the planets in our solar system. It's because of the interaction of these magnetic fields are keeping everything in position and everything rotating. Now, our solar system is then just a bigger plasma of the galaxy. And that's why our solar system in relation to other galaxies are also interacting and keeping their position, and so on and so on and so on in the universe. And we can come all the way down to our body and the atoms. So essentially the sun and the earth is just two plasmas interacting and keeping their distance, with their fields interacting with each other, maintaining that distance. So this is how we'll travel. It's actually very, very simple. If we know the maggrav, or magnetic gravitational strength of the moon, and we have a craft and we create the opposite strength, we're there, no fuel used, because it's just maggrav positioning. You just position yourself in relation to the other object using magnetic fields. No fuel is used, no fuel is required. The same as creating crafts on the Earth. If we know Earth is a plasma and Earth has certain magnetic gravitational fields, we begin to understand those fields, we can create our craft, which has its own magnetic gravitational fields. And so we learn to travel by just positioning. You know, if we want to move away in a great distance, it's repulsion. We just change our field in relation to Earth and bang, you've moved away quickly. You change the positioning and you come back. So that's travel, no fuel. It's as simple as that when you begin to understand this technology. Obviously, putting it into practice is a bit more difficult and getting them to work, but the science is there. The science can be understood. So a small plasma we call an atom or proton. A bigger plasma is the Earth. The Sun is an even bigger plasma. Our solar system, the galaxy, the universe. It's all, the universe is one big plasma ball, and within that you have all your galaxies, and within that you have all your solar systems. So it's just a fractal, but it's all connected with these fields. So the age-old question of what is gravity, it's just due to the interaction of magnetic fields. Now we've solved that mystery for mankind. The magnetic fields that make up your body come from the magnetic fields of the sun, and it comes from the central sun of the galaxy and the central sun of the universe. So nothing in this world or universe can exist without magnetic fields. That's the mystery of creation, because it's all to do with magnetic fields. How they come together creates the plants, the sun, human being. The whole world is made of different maggrav fields, magnetic gravitational fields of different strengths. This whole universe is built on the interaction of these fields. These fields are in constant motion, going from one place to another, depending on the strength and depending on their position. So everything's in constant motion. And when these fields slow down enough, we can see them as matter state. But that's on the weakest spectrum of the fields. So it's not a new science, but it's just an additional understanding of everything around us. And when we look at how to interact with these fields now, because they're all around us, but we've never learned to use them. So what we have to do is to create, from our matter state, like a piece of copper wire, we have to create nano layers on this copper wire. And you do that in your kitchen. It costs you $2. And you create nanoparticle layers on your, for example, copper wires. So everything that we see in the matter state, we call it a rock plastic. That's our materialistic world. And these are all made up of structures, little balls packed together. We call it matter, but they should be called little plasmas, which are packed tightly together. And so if you can view them as little magnets that are all stuck tight, closely next to each other. So that's why when we interact with them, they feel like there is matter and substance to them. When we're creating the nanomaterials of that same matter, all we are doing is taking those plasmas and adding energy to them so that we sort of push them apart so that these little plasma balls now are further apart. And when you look at sort of the black coating on your copper, that's about 30,000 layers thick. And when we push them further apart now what it does is we loosen the bondings between those atoms or those little plasmas, which allows the fields to come in, and we can now use those to start interacting with the fields because we've created the gap for the fields from the environment to come in. And so the nano layers are just our interface to these fields, because without the nano layers, we would not be able to interact with these fields. So in nature, we are our nano layers. Our skin is a nano layer. That's why we can interact with the fields, and we are made of the fields. Plants, the leaves, the stem, the roots are all nano layers. That's why the plants interact with the fields. And so once we've learned to create the nano layer, that's from there we can be able to create the GANS material and these little plasmas that we do. And all this is done in your kitchen. We all can do it. We just use those nano layers in certain combination with other plates. We create an environment in salt water, and we can create different GANS materials. And it's very, very simple. Now, each one of those GaNs materials is like a little sun, because now that's giving off, we've loosened that structure and we've gotten to a higher field strength. So that's giving off magnetical and gravitational fields. And that's how we can use and interact with that GaNs material. So the GaNs, what we call GaNs, is a molecule of a gas which becomes a nano of itself and appears in a solid state. But essentially, it's just a little plasma ball which has constantly giving off and receiving energy fields. And we create 4 or 5 different GaNs materials, CO2, copper oxide, zinc oxide, CH3, and C-GaNs. And Lee will explain how we use those for our body. And I've used those for show you agriculture. So every single one of these balls is like a little sun. It's constantly radiating energy, and it has a magnetic field, and we interact with that. That's how our body, why it works so well, is because we are interacting. We are plasma itself, and we are interacting with another plasma. And that's as simple as why the GaNs materials work. And so we go from the matter state to the nano to the GaN state, and then from that we are learning to work with the fields. And that's what Lee will explain with the health unit, or that processing unit there, is we've created that so that when you stand in the middle there, there's just you interacting with the fields only. You don't see it, but there are fields there. And from those fields, we can now go backwards. So we start working with these fields with the different reactors there. We can start creating our own GaNs material, which we can convert into nano and matter state again. So we can start working backwards, forwards and backwards, when we begin to understand this. And to give you some change in some paradigms, with this understanding, we now know that plants only interact and live off the fields. Plants do not absorb any matter state chemicals. So that changes agriculture on its head. It's only plants only interact with the fields. Our body doesn't absorb the food that we eat through the intestinal wall. Our body interacts with the fields only. These are all different paradigms that we're going to have to change and look at things from a different perspective. And this is where I'll hand you over to Lisa, who will talk about how we use this material in our health.
Okay, so I've been studying on the health side of this, and so I'll be able to give you a bit of more understanding on how the plasmas work with the health, because we're going to use nano-layered tools and GaNs to process the body. We don't talk about cure, we cure nothing. We don't create medication at all. What we do is we create fields. Because we are fields, we create the fields that our bodies need, and then we create a condition where you can absorb these fields and your bodies can create their own process to correct it to proper blueprint, you can say. So this is why we have a different way of dealing with the body, because we allow the body to heal itself and correct itself, because we give the fields to the body that it's going to need. So our body is made of billions of GaNs forming a total plasma. And this is the new understanding that makes us understand how to work with all our tools. We all know this, we've seen this, and we can feel it. When we just standing here, we continually radiate and absorb fields from everything around us. Our skin is the nanolayer that allows an interface with, while we absorb certain things and why we don't absorb others. So the skin is the interface and can connect or not connect with certain fields. Okay, so we as humans, we've always thought that we absorb all our nutrition from what we eat and put in our mouths. And this, again, is a fallacy. What we've understood now is that we are a plasma. When we put food in our mouths, we turn that matter state into a plasma state. We create the ganses in our body through our intestines, and it works its way, and we absorb the fields of these ganses through our intestinal wall to give our body nutrition. And then when it comes out the other end, it turns into matter again. What we also do is we absorb fields from many other places too. And I'm sure we've all felt this. We absorb fields from our skin and also through our senses. We absorb color, taste, sound, and all of these things feed our body. Believe it or not, it feeds our emotional state. When you see beautiful things, when you hear wonderful music, this all uplifts us and makes us feel good. And those are all fields and different field strengths that we absorb as a reactor or a plasma reactor every day. So what we need to understand a little bit about the health portion is that what we see as disease in a plasma state, and disease is created when there's a breakdown of the fields past the threshold of needed for normal function. So this is what we try and work on to give the person the fields that they need to restore normal function. When you look at a virus, what is a virus? A virus is a very strong package of energy fields which overcomes the amino acid of the body. And this is what makes it so difficult to fight. It's not something physical that we know that you can have an antibiotic for. And this is why viruses are not treated by any antibiotics, is because it's literally an energy packet. And we have figured out, too, how to use the energy, the plasmas that we make, because there's this constant interaction between the fields, the stronger to the weaker and vice versa. If you've got a very strong virus and you introduce a weaker field of one of the ganses, you can drain the virus of the energy and allow it to be neutralized, you could say. When we understand also about a plasma with cancer, what we understand with the cancer is there always is, besides when you actually damage your body and your body has some kind of damage, the other reason for a cancer appearing is there's definitely an emotional root which starts the cancer off, and then a seed develops. And that seed can be any number of 8 different metals or minerals, and those seeds then absorb every energy of that in the body. So let's say the seed is of iron. It will absorb huge amounts. It's like a feeder, and it will eat and eat and eat up all the iron energies, and you never actually die of the cancer itself. What you die is a lack of energy, because that cancer is feeding on all the energies of your body, and your body just depletes itself. So this is how we understand how the plasmas work with our bodies. And all health issues in our body have to be understood as Maggrav fields, and we can now begin to process and restore the body by using the fields. So just to give you a bit of an example of what the type of tools we start using, if we look at the pens, we use these nano-layered pens. They're just little copper wire that we've wound and created the correct magnetic and gravitational forces. And we use these to release fields, because what pain is a blockage of the fields. If you cut yourself or you hurt yourself, there's a blockage there in that area. So the fields build up. That tiny little millivolt that normally runs through your body has nowhere to go, And so all we do with these pens is to be able to release that blockage. Because the nanolayers can pull the fields, it literally will. They also, for the others who understand a little bit more and are not so physical, they're also intent wands. So you need to use them with your intent as well as just sticking it close to your physical body, and it will create even a stronger reaction. So with our pens, we use them directly on areas of surface pain, like insects bite or bruising or anywhere you've got a pain. But if any of you guys know all the reflexology points on your hands or your feet, it is also extremely effective on these areas for internal organs. For example, Jimmy, a few months back, had a terrible tummy ache. So I lay him on the bed, and I used the pens on the bottom of his feet. You don't put them on the feet, you hold them a little bit away. And I had one in each hand, and I was going up and down. The pens actually show you don't even have to know the reflexology points, because if you very gently move the pens up and down, they literally will start to vibrate, and they'll lock on a specific point, and they'll work. And it's quite fascinating to see when we go on our workshops. We usually do this quite early on in the workshop, because most people come and have a concept of fields, but they don't understand they're actually there. And when they come and hold the pens and start feeling what's going on, they understand that there is something to it. So I took these pens and I ran them up and down Jimmy's feet. I started feeling them vibrate. He said to me, yes, it's there. And he could feel the whooshing coming out the bottom of his feet. And I literally watched his stomach, which was distended, flatten almost instantaneously. So that's the power of just a tiny little tool like these pens. Here are the reflexology points that we all know. You can do it on hands as well. So this is just a small little tool that is actually quite a powerful thing. Then we go on to our ganses. And our ganses are made, once we have our nanomaterials, we create these ganses. And they're a solid form of energy packets. So we use the CO2, which is the first time that people have ever seen CO2, which is not a gas. It's CO2 in a matter state that we've created. And that CO2 connects to the physical and emotional and amino acid strength of the body. Each of these ganses has a particular purpose, and it links to a specific thing that it needs to do in the body. So the CO2 has the connection with the physical and emotional. The ZNO, which is Zn is zinc, so it's zinc oxide, has an emotional connection. And as we've understood, most chronic diseases and cancers all have an emotional root. So when we work on the body, we have to work on the emotion as well as the body. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere, because the emotion will just carry on being as is. So we support the emotion with everything we do in health and healing. The CuO is the copper oxide. That's the blue one there you see in the tube. And that is really a very strong physical connection to muscles and things like that. If you ask any chemist, they'll tell you, yes, there's a lot of copper in your muscle tissue. And the CH3 is also something which has not been physically seen outside of the norm before, because it's a carbon with 3 hydrogen atoms, which is actually a tritium, not 3 hydrogens with a proton and electron, but it's a carbon with 2 neutrons, a proton and electron, and this is actually your energy. So this is what all your natural sugars are made out of, and so we use this as natural energy. And so it's extremely powerful to help the body with energy, which is not like a sugar that you would normally eat that is not good for you. And then when we make our ganses, every time we create a gans, we do it in a bath of salt water, and we get this fatty layer that gets created on the top. for every little flake of GANS in the bottom, you get a tiny little drop of fatty bit that settles on the top. And we collect these as well. And these amino acids have a very strong connection with the body, and we use these when we mix them in with our GANSs to make sure, because every time you make it closer and closer to what the body is, you've got a better and better connection, because obviously fields that are similar like to interact together. Fields that are completely not similar won't interact at all. So those are the GANSs that we use, and a combination of these are used in recipes to process the body. So we've had very great success with processing things like blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and many more. We're learning new processes every week and every month. 2 days ago, we just got the final understanding of the process used for pulling mercury out of the brain for those damaged people who've been damaged by vaccines. So there's the next one in the list. We can even repair brain injury. So when we have to understand about how we work with these, when we create our GANS at the bottom, we always put it into water. We use distilled water, and it energizes the water on the top. It will settle it right down, and that is called liquid plasma. And so liquid plasma is what we use for a lot of our tools, and the liquid plasma is as strong as the GANS. So most of the time we're not using the GANS at all. We use it occasionally, just a flake or two, just to keep everything energized. We don't drink the GANS. We don't use the GANS, essentially at all. We use the liquid plasma which floats on the top. And in that way, when we've made our GANSs and we have them, you can have them for, they reckon the half-life of it is 2,000 years, so you'll be able to give it to your great-great-grandchildren if we're not in space and we don't need it by then. So it's quite a good investment. It takes time and effort to make. It's not difficult to make, but it's tricky, it's technical, and it takes time and effort. Some of my GANSs I brew for a month at a time. So, and then I still only get a small amount. You'll see on the table, if you care to look at all our demonstration bits and pieces there, there's a GANS making kit there. It says CO2 GANS making kit, and those tiny little flakes you'll see on the bottom have been being made there. It's taken 3 weeks to produce that amount of GANS. Some of them are faster, but the CO2 is the most difficult, because we actually are making a prototype, in essence, with metal plates of what a leaf does. A leaf creates the CO2 inside itself, and we are acting like a leaf and collecting our CO2. So what we normally do with our different types and how we use for health applications with our plasmas, we drink our plasma water, which comes off the top, so we don't drink the GANS itself. It's much too powerful. If you do, you might just blow your brain out. But you drink the water on the top, very, very powerful, and it helps the body to rebalance itself. And specific recipes create harmony and process dysfunction, such as diabetes and high blood pressure, as we've said. And you could use it through this way, where you take the water off the top, or you can use it through field transfer. So you'll see there'll be some of the tools over there on the table that literally the GANS is inside something, and if you put water around, you just need to leave it in its test tube or whatever it's in, and it will energize that water, and when you drink that water, you get the energy imprint in the water. These are our health patches, and this is another staple of the technology, are the health patches. So all we do is we create small little bags with a little bit of the liquid plasma, which is the water on the top of the GANS, inside, usually the CO2 and a little bit of the zinc. And if you create a sandwich with a place that's painful and wrap the patches on that spot, A lot of people who've had, shoulder dislocations or knee problems, or they'll take these and they'll strap them on overnight, or however they want to wear them, and it literally eases the pain, and the pain pen will take the pain out, but what happens with the patches is it slowly starts healing or creating the correct energy for your body to correct whatever pain it's got there. So it's not just dealing symptomatically. It works on the actual problem that you have. Spraying is also extremely effective. So one can just literally, when you've created your gansers, or you have your gansers and you have a nice big jar of it, continually fill up spray bottles and spray various things. And we do use the spray as well for our plants. So when we do the liquid plasma, we pull off and we foliar spray our plants, and they love it. You see instant health and vitality in the plants when you're spraying it, and that includes ourselves as well. With the cream, you'll see on the table I've got little pots of cream. Quite a long time ago, I understood with this, using the CO2 and the zinc, that we can rectify many cancers. And so I decided to test on myself. I have in the past, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried black salve. Works like a treat, but it is painful as hell, because it kills every cancer cell that it gets in touch with, and that cancer cell literally then gets expelled out of the body, and it is pain. And I had done this before on myself, and the last time I decided no, I had a few spots on my body that didn't want to heal, so I created a cream, quite a strong plasma cream, and 10 days, and the spots were gone. So I had previously given some black salve to people before, and so I got a phone call, and the lady said, "Do you still do the black salve?" I said, "No, sorry. Got something better for you, though." And I said to her, "I'm quite happy just to post it. I want you to test it for me." She said her husband had a big thing on his forehead and a big thing on his ear, and I got a phone call a month later, and she said to me, 3 times a day on the head and the ear, all gone. So I know it's not just a theory. I've tested it on myself. I've tested it on others. And yes, it's working. So we've managed with that cream to, I think, hopefully in the future change a lot of lives. I don't say what it does. I can just tell you what it did for me. When you understand that there's a field transfer effect and how the fields are so strong, if you look at these pictures, this is what happens in the ice. When you put the fields of different tools and then you freeze something, this is what happens in the ice. And if you see in the middle picture there, I had a bracelet. I make these little bracelets, and I put the bracelet on top of a Glad wrap on top of a bowl. So it was so far suspended above the bowl, and I froze it. 2 days later, I pulled it out. I could see that there were these wonderful streams of bubbles coming out, and I could see there was a pattern in the ice, and I was very excited. So I turfed it out the bowl to see if I could see clearer, because it was a bit, it gets a bit smoky when it first comes out the freezer. And the pressure of it just opening up and coming into the warm, it cracked open. And what had happened, because the fields are so strong, and there's a central point of the fields in the center of the ice, after 2 days, that center piece had not frozen. And so when it cracked open, here was this beautiful hole in the ice, which showed how the toroidal field, it creates these bracelets, create a toroid. And this is what we see in the ice. So if that's what it does to the ice, you understand, if you wear it, what it can do to your body. So we wear these different kind of tools. You can GANS any matter as well, and I'd just like to explain, any of you that are on any chronic medications or any type of, you'd like to have different vitamins and minerals, is that we can GANS any type of matter, any tablet or mineral. And we've tried this on numerous things. So if you GANS your, whatever you use for some specific, and then you take water and you wear it in a patch in your pocket, you can literally gain the fields from that medication without any side effects, because your body only absorbs what it wants to absorb. It doesn't take what it doesn't need, and we don't need side effects, so it won't absorb it. And you can replace the pills that you were using with the GANS materials. But that is only a short-term solution, because in any event, if you take certain of the GANS waters, you can process your body back to health where you won't need the tablets anyway. Now, we've got different types of health units. They first started with intricate coil-type units, which are very difficult to make, like the MagRav unit that you saw in our first few slides. You have to wind wires, very many wires, and get really technically deft, and it was just too hard for us. We're not the windy wire people. So because we are the GANS people and we love the water and we've done things with our plants, we decided to work on the track of the liquid plasma type health unit, and you'll see it at the back there. What we have is each of these rings, which look like a bit of Beam Me Up Scotty, are a double ring. There's a ring, a tube inside the tube, and there are double GANSes in each tube, and this allows for a flow. So when you're standing in there, you become in the center of the torus field, and the toroidal field literally moves around you, and whatever fields are in there of the CO2 and the zinc will, your body will absorb, and you'll slowly come into balance with the fields. We did a test 3 weeks ago. We were here doing a workshop, and one of the Keshe guys came along and he said, I brought my blood pressure unit and we can check. We hadn't even thought of that, actually. So he sat everybody down and took their blood pressure before they went into the unit. They were in the unit for 15 minutes and then hopped out again, and he took their blood pressure again. And 8 out of the 10 people had moved more towards normality with their blood pressure. I think about 6 of them had high blood pressure, which came down. 2 had low blood pressure, which came up. And the 2 that didn't respond, I went and asked the Keshe doctors why that was. And he explained to me that if you start drinking the water and you don't respond within 48 hours, that you have a salt problem in your body. So you can rectify that quite simply. You can pull out the salt in your body first, and once you've pulled some of the salt out of your body, then you can go onto the liquid plasma and your body will rebalance itself. So it's quite an interesting tool. Oh, and by the way, they tried to put the blood pressure cuff on and test the blood pressure with a person in the system, and it wouldn't read. So the fields were too strong for it to create a reaction. Now, that is our unit, which is sort of the next generation from the coil unit, but after that tube unit is going to come the reactors, the rotating reactors. And here with the rotating reactors, you'll see some on the table there. We're mimicking what the Earth is or what the Sun is. So we're spinning the GANSes in there, and so you create a stronger field of that GANS. And so over time we are learning, and as we're learning and creating all of these tools and devices, we're understanding how to work them. And eventually we'll be able to create these rotating reactors as 2 walls of rotating reactors, and when you stand in between, the fields will work. Just to explain to you that with this type of device, if you go onto a website called cancerprocessing.org, which the Keshe Foundation have set up, It is a combination of this type of device and patches which were used for a 90-day processing of a lady with full-on breast cancer tumor the size of her breast, and they literally have, it's gone. Okay, so just to explain that, it might not look like much, but this is actually breakthrough stuff that we're dealing with here. So with the rotating reactors, we get the strong fields, and you only take what you need from these fields. So often people say to me, I feel nothing. Well, you obviously don't need what that thing is trying to give you. You'll only take what you need because you absorb, you the lower strength and it's the stronger strength, but there has to be a connection. There has to be some kind of connection. So Ganzfeld objects worn close or held in your hand will allow you to absorb fields, and the process is basically field transfer. Plasma rule number 1, which you sort of understood from Jimmy and his explanation with the plants, is that the stronger will always feed the weaker. And this is how we work with the tools. We allow a strong field to feed to the weaker field, or with the cancer, for example, there's a very strong field in the cancer. When we understand what it is, we can provide a weaker field on the outside to allow the fields to feed the weaker to get rid of it in the body. So this is how we're learning to work to bring ourselves back to balance. When we talk about plasma, we can't get away from one very, very important subject, and this is the ethics of plasma and feeding our emotion and our soul. What we haven't touched on here is that the strongest field is the creation field, the creator field. And it is in the center of every single one of us. And we are a reactor giving off and taking fields all the time. And we have to start becoming aware of what we are giving off and what we are taking in. And this is what it means to, get into your own awareness, to slow down and get into your own awareness and be conscious and responsible every day of what you are giving out to other human beings and what you are actually absorbing from human beings. Because at the moment, we're kind of just these things that we run around. We don't know what we're giving off and we don't know what we're taking in from others. And that is the essence of what we need to learn. And this means ethics, because you are taking somebody's happiness by projecting anger on them. You are impacting their health and their vitality by giving them fields of negativity. And so we have to every day start understanding what we are doing with our fields, and this is where the change is going to start coming. The Keshe Foundation has one really big aim, and that is to spread this technology in exchange for world peace. Mr. Keshe he's created the blueprints, he's patented them, and he has said to every single country and now every single human being on this planet that he will help them to understand and he will give it to them, because this is the technology of defense. We can stop all the guns tomorrow, because if the guns can't work and if everybody has the technology to switch the guns off, we can have peace. And the point of this whole exercise is that we are only going to be able to use this technology when we sign to peace. We have to understand that being peaceful is the only way we're going to go to space, is the only way we're going to evolve. And it's extremely important, because they won't let us get off this planet. And you know who I'm talking about. They will not allow us to leave until we sign to peace, and we understand that when we go out there, for a start, it's not only about warring, it's about rocking up on another planet and saying, well, that looks nice, let me eat it. In the meantime, it's actually a creature that wants to be friends with you. So we have to think in a totally different paradigm. We've got to look at using the fields for food. We have to think about using the fields for our just our daily existence so that we don't need to destroy anything. And with the foundation, the whole process needs to go on about peace. For the whole month, we've been busy on the peace process. We've asked all nations to please sign to peace. We've gone and blitzed the embassies and all over the show with this please sign the peace treaty. And I don't know if any of you have been on the website lately or if any of you know it, but Mr. Turnbull's office said he was too busy to come sign for peace. So now he's under the warmonger group. And people got a bit upset about that. But frankly, if you don't even have time to come and sort peace out, then you are a warmonger. So we have had our First Nation sign to peace, and it is extremely fitting for us who has come to sign for peace, and that is the Cherokee Nation of North America, have come to sign for peace. And it's important. I feel that all original cultures around the planet will show us the way to peace. And so please, I invite any original and other to help us to bring peace with this kind of technology, because this is where we are going to elevate ourselves to in the decades to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa and Jimmy. And you sort of caught me unawares. Are we going to have another 10 minutes?
Anyone want to ask a question? We've got a couple of minutes. So,
would anyone like to ask a question? I can bring the mic to you.
How does love fit into the plasma idea?
Well, obviously love, again, is a field strength that is very beneficial to others around you. And with this, what we're understanding is that to give off the love energy and give it with unconditional, the unconditional love, that is the secret of all the spiritual people. That is what elevated them to a different level, and this is the only way we're going to elevate our own souls, is to unconditionally love. That is the essence of plasma energy too. So it goes hand in hand. Although we're learning the science, this is the science of spirituality, because everything is connected. Our physical body is only an expression of our soul, which is inside of us, which is the strongest field of all, and through the love is how we express our emotions to others, and that will help to elevate everybody.
Any other questions? Yes?
Lisa, on the subject of love, so do I understand that love has got a stronger field strength than hate?
No, it's got a different field strength. It's just different, but it's something that isn't compatible with us and with most of creation. Love or hate?
Oh, love or hate?
Yeah. Is it love stronger than hate? So the strength is just the passion you put behind it. But the creator energy is a positive energy. So the hate, for example, is the opposite to creator energy. So it's just different. And the strength of it is how you give it off.
Next question. This gentleman over here.
Wow, guys, that was just amazing. I've been very interested in this for a long time and have noticed that whenever there have been radical discoveries like this, that people tend to disappear, and I hope this doesn't happen to you. And if you can get this out as fast as possible.
Well said. Thank you. Any other questions? A few. Oh, Mariana, yes.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to mention, in terms of plasma energy, my husband and I have been using a Rife machine for the last year, and we program frequencies that go through a plasma ball, and the plasma ball flicks through our body. And my husband was on very heavy chemo for a week and nearly died, and decided after that he would never touch chemo ever again in his life. And he's been on the Rife machine, and it's absolutely miraculous, the change in him. He's just so much better. And he was told by his oncologist, you will be in palliative care unless you continue with the chemo.
Yeah, we have to understand that this is one technology. There are many other technologies out there, and a lot of them and all of them will work on the same science. They tackle it from different angles, but it comes down to the same science. And the Rife machines and there's Therify machines, they're all working in that, but from a different perspective and maybe from a certain point of view, certain energy frequency, whereas if you understand the whole plasma and you get it correct, you can give person exactly what they need and how they need it. But all this technology is all going to come together and work very nicely hand in hand with everything else.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Now, there was a question at the back here.
Thank you very much for that. That was fascinating. I have a question on the nutritional side where you said that it's not so much about the nutritional aspects of food, but the energy coming off the food that we absorb. Are you finding that we know in food that has the plasma enhanced that we don't need to eat as much or absorb as much? Have you noticed anything in that regard?
From our perspective, since we started, especially manufacturing and doing a lot of the Ganses, and we've got our Magrav and everything rotating in our house, we probably eat about 50% less food than what we used to. We're just not hungry anymore, and a lot of the times we were cooking food because our kids wanted food. And it's just habit, and it's emotional. So eventually we will all get to the point where we won't eat the food. And what we have found with our lettuces that we grow using the plasma, particularly last winter, our demand normally drops off for lettuce because it's not the greatest food in wintertime. And last winter we didn't get a drop-off at all because somehow we know that people walking past the shelf, and you've got our lettuces on the shelf, their soul there knows inside that, and they feel that connection with that food. So it is highly healthy food, and so they'll want to take it. And so that's why we didn't see really a drop-off, is because people intuitively knew this is healthy for them.
Just another thing, we've got a guy that can see fields, okay, and he's in Austria, and we can show him photos, and he can tell fields. So we had him look at our system and see what he could see. And we had all our tomatoes growing. We never showed you our tomatoes. We grew tomatoes all the way through last winter, by the way, outdoors. And he looked at our tomatoes, and he's got a device, or it's himself anyway, with a pendulum. I don't know if any of you have ever done this, where you can intuit things with a pendulum. But he's been doing it for 30-odd years. And he's got these things called Bovis points. So he's got a graph, and it shows Bovis points, however many thousands, from 1 until 20, let's say. And he said, okay, normal fruit and vegetables come up at 5,000 to 6,000 Bovis. Lourdes water, I'm sure you've heard about the healing waters of Lourdes, where it's like the sacred grotto and all. That water shows 11,000 Bovis. And when he saw our tomatoes, he said, oh, they're reading 16,000 Bovis. You've got 16,000 Bovis tomatoes, which are healing tomatoes. We were quite pleased on that. So what it's doing is it's giving the food the plasma energy. So hopefully when we're feeding all the people in our community, we're giving them what they need anyway. But at some point, we will go off the food entirely.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Up here.
Thank you. I just wonder, the energy field you're talking about, love and so forth, and other ways, mental, could that be related to consciousness?
It's just another word for it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, look, thank you so much, Jimmy and Lisa. Let's please show your appreciation. Thank you very much.
This whole Exodus conference came about from Maker's Place, which is a community organisation in Redfern, and we are the Keshe Sydney group, I would say, and we make magravs, or we're tending to make magravs, we make GANs. You can join Maker's Place, and it's just on the web under makersplace.org, and you can make a donation if you like, because it's just a community group, and we want to see as many people as possible come together to try and make Magrav units, the energy units, Magrav GANs, and the health things. So please support us if you can, and we'd appreciate it.